Hello everyone, I am Dr. Monisha. This video is about to discuss the equations of embryology to actually brush up. This video is for the medical officers who are in duty and who are going to appear in the coming NEET PG. So you won't find time managing the cases as well. So this is to give a quick brush up of the basic questions of embryology. So I would like to thank Dr. Bharati for making me this initiative. So let us proceed. So at the end of fifth week of gestation, how many number of somites can be seen? Okay. So this is the question, and at the end of fifth week of gestation, we can be having about 44 number of somites. If the question is finally how many number of somites will be having, it is about 37 to 38. But the question is at the end of fifth week of gestation. Okay, so the correct answer is 44 number of somites. We will see how. Okay, so here you have the trilaminar germ disc. Here you have the ectoderm, and here you have the intraembryonic mesoderm and endoderm. Okay, so and the intraembryonic mesoderm will be divided into uh, paraxial mesoderm, intermediate mesoderm and lateral plate mesoderm. This paraxial mesoderm will be forming the vertebral column. Intermediate plate of mesoderm will be forming the genitourinary system, and lateral plate mesoderm will be contributing to the body wall. Now, this paraxial mesoderm, we are going to see about this paraxial mesoderm. Okay, so what will happen is this paraxial mesoderm, a series of clefts, as you can see here. See, a series of transverse clefts appear in the paraxial mesoderm to divide the paraxial mesoderm into somites or metameres. Okay, into somites or metameres. Okay, so each somite is going to contribute to the vertebral column. So when does a somite form is, it forms between the 20th to 30th day, and that is why it mostly comes in the third week, as you can see, the 21st to 27th day. So the third week is otherwise called the somite week, or the 20th to 30th day is called as the somite period, because that is when these somites develop, or somites or metameres. So what happens is, it happens at the rate of 3 pairs of somite per day. So as you can see, you can calculate the age of the embryo with the number of somites that is formed. Okay, so each somite further divides into a dorsolateral part, which is a dermomyotome, and a ventromedial part, the sclerotome. Okay, it divides into sclerotome, the ventromedial part. You can see the ventral and as well as the medial part. This sclerotome is going to contribute to the vertebral column, and the dermomyotome is going to contribute to the dermis and the muscles of the body wall. Okay, so this is about the somite. Okay, so as I said, at the end of fifth week, okay, we have, see, at the end we have 44 somites, which is at about 30th day, and at the end of fifth week, which comes at the 35th day, we will have 44 somites. But finally, the first somite and the caudal coccygeal somites disappear. So finally, we will be having around 37 somites. Okay, but the question is, at the end of fifth week, we will be having 44 somites. Okay. What is the embryonic period of development? You see, the first to the end of second week is for the fertilization and the implantation. Okay, from the 0 day to the end of second week, that is the 14th day, is for the fertilization and implantation. From the beginning of third week, till 8th week, okay, till the end of 8th week, you have the embryonic period where much of the systemic development will be happening, and that is why we ought to be very careful regarding the teratogenic drugs. And from the 8th week till birth, we will be having the fetal period, okay, where there will be mitosis and increase in the size of the organs will be happening, okay. So the answer for this question is up to 8th week, it is said to be as a embryonic period. Okay, so identify the correct pair. Embryonic period 9 to 20 weeks, it is wrong as we have seen now. Fertilization and implantation happens in the first 2 weeks, so this is also wrong. Embryonic period from 4 to 8 weeks. Actually, some say that it is from 4 to 8 weeks, but actually it is from the 3rd week to the 8th week. So this is partially right. So we can take the third option as the correct option. Okay, and the prophase of meiosis 1, which are all true. Okay, now what they have asked is, they have not asked about meiosis in total, they have asked about prophase of meiosis. First of all, the chromosomes separate. Okay, the chromosomes, whether it is mitosis or meiosis, they separate only in telophase, and the resultant cell is diploid, which you might think is wrong, but they have asked about the prophase of meiosis 1, okay, and not the entire of meiosis. If it is the entirety of meiosis, then the resultant cell will be haploid, but in prophase there will be duplication of the genetic material and the resultant cell will be diploid. Okay, so this is right. And sister chromatids replicate. Okay, there won't be any replication of sister chromatid in any case. There will be a replication of only chromosomes. Okay, so sister chromatids separate. Sister chromatids, yeah, they separate, but they won't separate in the prophase. They separate during the anaphase. Okay, sister chromatids separate during the anaphase. So what is the correct option is, the resultant cell is diploid. At first glance, this might sound as a wrong option, but this is a right option, which you can clarify here. So this is the meiosis cycle, as you already know. So I like to say one thing: whenever you study, you top up the new information on something you already know. Don't think as if it is already new to you. There will be some point where you will be having some idea about that subject. Okay, so you will be topping up new informations over that. So it will be a relative memory and it will be easy for you to learn. Okay, so in meiosis, you have this diploid germ cell. Okay, meiosis is generally for germ cells. So any cell is diploid. So you have this diploid germ cell, and in the prophase, you have this duplication of genetic material. So the genetic material is becoming 4n here. Okay, here it is 2n, and here the genetic material is duplicating, so it is 4n. Okay, and then the chromosomes condense and form chromatids. Okay, and then there is crossing of this paternal blue and maternal brown chromatid. Okay, so there is crossing over and there is separation after crossing over. Okay, which happens in anaphase. Okay, then what happens is, there is two cells are formed. Okay, which will be secondary spermatocyte in case of spermatogenesis, and secondary oocyte in case of oogenesis. Okay, so you have these two cells where there is separation of maternal and paternal chromosome with some genetic material exchange. Okay, so next in the anaphase, what happens is, there is further separation of these chromatids, and finally you have the formation of 4 cells which are haploid and which has only a single number of genetic material. Okay, so this results. So you see in prophase you have 4 stages. As you all know, leptotin, zygotin, pachytene and diplotin. Okay, in prophase 1 of meiosis you have 4 stages. Okay, leptotin, zygotin, pachytene and diplotin. What happens is, see leptotin, see how the L is. So the chromosomes will be looking slender like that of the L in leptotin. And zygotin, you see the Z. Okay, so Z, synapses will be happening. Synapses or crossing over will be happening in the zygotin stage. Okay, and pachytene, it is packed. Okay, so the tetrad formation, as you can see here, okay, the tetrad formation will be happening in pachytene and diplotin, where there are two uh, where there is separation of the maternal and paternal chromosomes with some exchange of genetic material. Okay, so there are 4 stages in prophase: leptotin, zygotin, pachytene and diplotin. Then in metaphase you have the cells arranged in the axial cells, the chromosomes arranged in the axis. And metaphase, anaphase, the centrioles pull the chromosomes. Okay, and in the telophase you have 2 separate cells with haploid number of chromosomes and 2. So then you have the prophase 2, anaphase 2, um, prophase 2, metaphase 2, anaphase 2 and telophase 2. And then the result, you have the 4 haploid, the sperms or ovum. Okay, so this is just about the basis. I'm not going into the detail of meiosis because you already know that. Don't think that you don't know that, you already know. But you see, I've said about these things. Synapses will be happening in the leptotin zygotin stage. Okay, is okay, zygotin stage, and tetrad formation will be in the pachytene stage. Okay, and dictyotin, there is a stage called dictyotin which is the resting stage. Okay, dictyotin, okay, which is a resting stage for the ovum, which we will see later. So let us move to the next question. Spermatogonia divides by which cell division? Okay, the question is about spermatogonia. Okay, specifically about spermatogonia. All germ cells will undergo meiosis. Okay, all germ cells will be undergoing meiosis to produce the final spermatocyte or oocyte, to produce a sperms or ovum. Okay, but what does the spermatogonia undergo? Okay, so that we have. So here you have the male germ cell which is diploid, which undergoes mitosis to produce dark type A spermatogonia, which further undergoes mitosis to produce light type A spermatogonia and dark type A spermatogonia. This dark type A spermatogonia which will remain dormant for the next cycle. It is like that of a reserve. Okay, the light type A spermatogonia which will further undergo mitosis to produce type B spermatogonia, which will further undergo mitosis only to produce the primary spermatocyte. So till primary spermatocyte you will be having only mitotic cycle. Okay, mitotic cycle of spermatogonia. Okay, then only the primary spermatocyte will be undergoing the first meiotic division to produce a secondary spermatocyte, and the secondary spermatocyte will be undergoing the second meiotic division to produce a spermatids. Okay, so this you must see. And this meiotic cycle, as you have all already known, meiotic cycle is a reduction cycle. Okay, you'll be hearing, you would have heard this repeatedly, that meiotic cycle. Yes, of course it is a reduction division, but when is the reduction happening? During the first meiosis or during the second meiosis? Okay, So till first meiosis you will be having 46 number of chromosomes and 2n genetic material. Okay, 2n genetic material. And in the first meiosis the 46 chromosomes, this meiotic cycle is like சொத்து பிரிச்சுfine. Okay, you are dividing the assets among the hair of the family. Okay, so this secondary spermatocyte is like the daughter or son. Okay, so this daughter or son is later on going to give the assets to their daughters. Okay, their daughters or sons, their grand, so the assets will be going to the granddaughters or grandsons. Okay, so this 46 chromosomes, okay, 46 chromosomes and 2n genetic material will be divided among the primary spermatocyte, will be divided among the secondary spermatocyte as 23 genetic material for 23 number of chromosomes for each, but the 2n genetic material remains the same for both daughter or son. Okay, so in the first meiotic division, okay, the chromosome number is getting reduced but not the genetic information. So because in the first meiotic division the chromosome number is getting reduced, the first meiotic division is called as the reduction division or heterotypical division, whereas in the second meiotic cycle, yeah, you can see that all the four are having the 23 number of chromosomes. So the second meiotic division is called homotypical division and it is not a reduction division. Okay, so this you must understand. So the what was the question is the spermatogonia will be undergoing which type of division? The spermatogonia will be undergoing mitotic type of division. Only the primary spermatocyte will be undergoing the first meiotic division and the secondary spermatocyte will be undergoing the second meiotic division. Okay. Then what is true about spermatid? It is derived from the primary spermatocyte. No. It is derived from the secondary spermatocyte. Yes. It undergoes yes, it is derived from the secondary spermatocyte. Yes or not? We have seen just now. Okay. It undergoes mitotic division. Not necessary. The four spermatids that are finally formed doesn't undergo any further division. It doesn't undergo mitotic division or meiotic division. It undergoes only what? Spermiogenesis, where the spermatid is getting converted into sperms. Okay, mature spermatozoa. So here you can see the primary spermatocyte. Okay, the primary spermatocyte after the first meiotic division. There is separation of the maternal orange chromosomes and the paternal blue chromosomes with some exchange of genetic material. See, this separation of maternal and paternal chromosomes is called as the assortment of chromosomes. Okay, independent assortment of chromosomes, division of the maternal and paternal chromosomes except for some genetic material which they have exchanged. Okay, so here you have one secondary spermatocyte and here you have another secondary spermatocyte which will be undergoing the second meiotic division and resulting in the formation of four spermatids which are nothing but immature sperms. Okay, so they have to undergo spermiogenesis, okay, to result in the spermatozoa or mature sperms. Okay, so what happens is this is a structure of spermatids. Okay, it is just round. What happens is the Golgi complex is going to form the acrosomal cap, okay, around the nucleus in the head, and the centrioles are going to form the neck region of the spermatozoa with one in horizontal orientation and the other one in vertical orientation, and these axial filaments are going to form the body and tail, and the mitochondria, see this mitochondria is going to form the sheath around the axial skeleton only in the body. Okay, So you have the axial filaments in the body as well as the tail, but the mitochondria envelops the axial filaments only in the body. In the tail it is okay. In the tail there is only the axial filaments. Okay, so you have this axial filaments and you have the N piece, which is devoid of a surrounding sheath. Okay, the end piece is just only the axial filaments. What is the difference between the tail and the end pieces? The end piece is here you have only the axial filaments without the surrounding sheath. Okay, so this is about the spermiogenesis, where the spermatids are getting converted into mature sperms. Okay, so coming on to the next question, haploid number of chromosomes is seen in. Okay, so tell me, spermatogonia, it is going to have diploid number of chromosomes. Primary spermatocyte, diploid number of chromosomes. Primary spermatocyte undergoes first meiotic division, which is the reduction division, okay, resulting in the formation of haploid number of chromosomes in secondary spermatocyte. Even in secondary spermatocyte, they are going to have haploid number of chromosomes, okay, but they are going to have the entire genetic material, the 2n amount of genetic material. Okay, so that is the thing. And see here again you can see you have in the secondary spermatocyte 23 chromosomes but 2n amount of genetic material, and only when spermatids are formed they are going to have 23 chromosomes with 1n amount of genetic material. Okay, so spermatogenesis, you all already know this. Okay, spermatogenesis takes about 74 days. Okay, then independent assortment of chromosomes. I said the separation of paternal and maternal chromosomes, okay, occurs at which level? Okay, here the 46 chromosomes in the primary spermatocyte. Okay, the 46 chromosomes is 23 is paternal and 23 is maternal chromosomes, and we are going to divide the paternal and maternal chromosomes. So 23, where it is going to happen is when it undergoes the first meiotic division. So primary to secondary spermatocyte, the independent assortment, the separation of the paternal and maternal chromosomes is going to happen, which you can also see in this picture. If you are going to take the blue one as paternal and the brown one as brown or orange one as maternal, the separation of the paternal and maternal is going to happen when the primary spermatocyte is going to undergo the first meiotic division to form the secondary spermatocyte. Okay, all is true regarding events related to oogenesis except the primary oocyte is arrested at prophase. Yes, this we all already know. Prophase arrest happens in birth or at about before birth or at birth. Okay, the LS surge occurs about 24 to 48 hours. It is only approximate. It is actually 34 to 36 hours. Okay, fine. Anyway, it happens prior to ovulation. The first polar body is released before ovulation. Yes, the first polar body is released before ovulation, which we'll see in the oogenesis cycle. Okay, meiosis 2 is a reduction division. No, what I said is meiosis 1 is reduction division or heterotypical division, where the chromosome numbers are reduced to half from 46 to 23. But meiosis 2 is a homotypical division where the 23 number of chromosomes is being equally divided for the grandsons or daughters. That is for the spermatocytes or oocytes. Okay, the secondary spermatocytes or oocytes. So this is a oogenetic cycle. Here you have the female germ cell with diploid number of chromosomes and which undergoes mitosis to form oogonia. Okay, so which undergoes mitosis, further undergoes mitosis to form the primary oocyte with the diploid number of chromosomes. Then it undergoes a first meiotic division. But unlike spermatogenesis, there is no two oocyte, secondary oocyte formation. Only one secondary oocyte formation, because you see the ladies are precious. Okay, so they are only available in limited amounts. Okay, secondary oocyte, only one secondary oocyte is formed, and the first and the other one without the cytoplasm becomes the first polar body, because most of the cytoplasm goes to the secondary oocyte. The polar body is neglected of cytoplasm, and that is why it is called as a polar body. And in the second meiotic division, where you can see the chromosome number is maintained in the second meiotic division, because the second meiotic division is a homotypical division. It is not a reduction division. Only the first meiosis is reduction division. Okay, so mature ovum is formed and the second polar body is released. Okay, so the first meiotic division happens just before ovulation. Okay, and the second meiotic division happens only after fertilization. Okay, so the first polar body is released after ovulation. The secondary oocyte, you tell me now. The secondary oocyte, by the time the primary oocyte becomes secondary oocyte, the first meiotic division or reduction division has happened. So definitely it is going to be haploid. But this n number of genetic material or 2n number of genetic material. I said for the sons or daughters, the genetic material is going to be same. Only when the asset is going to be divided among the grandsons or daughters, that is when they are going to form the sperm or ovum, the genetic material is going to become N. Okay, so with secondary oocyte, it is going to be haploid and 2n amount of genetic material. Okay, so again you can see here. Okay, secondary oocyte is haploid, but it has 2n amount of genetic material because it is a son or daughter. Okay, only when it comes to grandsons or granddaughters, they are going to have haploid number of chromosomes and 1n amount of genetic material. Okay, so germ cells are derivative of any cell, any definitive cell is a derivative of epiblast. So, you don't have to worry about it. Germ cells are derivative. If there is epiblast, it is epiblast. Okay, then don't have to worry about it. Okay, so I'll talk about epiblast. You all know, you all have heard about bilaminar germ disc, yes or no? So there is formation of bilaminar germ disc in the embryo development. Okay, so you will have two layers. Okay, epiblast. Okay, the bilaminar germ disc, the upper layer is, the blue one is epiblast and the down one is hypoblast. Okay, because this epiblast and hypoblast are there like a thing, they are called bilaminar germ disc. What happens is, at some point there will be invagination of this epiblast cells. See, like they are going to fall in a pit. Okay, so this invagination of epiblast cells, they are going to replace the hypoblast to form the endoderm. They are going to form the mesoderm, which will be between the epiblast and the hypoblast, and they are going to replace the epiblast itself into the ectoderm. So the epiblast is otherwise called the primitive ectoderm. Okay, and the hypoblast is otherwise called as the primitive endoderm. Okay, so this epiblast is going to give rise to the definitive ectoderm, definitive mesoderm, and definitive endoderm. Okay, so there is formation of three germ layers: ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm. Both, all the three definitive. So this process is called as a gastrulation. Okay, this process is called as this invagination of cells to form all the three germ layers: definitive, ectoderm, endoderm, and mesoderm is called as gastrulation. Okay, so what happens is, see here you can see the invagination of cells, and that invaginating line is called as the primitive sheath. So there is formation of definitive ectoderm, definitive mesoderm, and definitive endoderm. And so from where all this is going to come is this epiblast. Okay, and from this epiblast only all the germ cells are going to come, even the germ cells. Okay, so what happens is, from this epiblast the germ cells are going to come and they are going to mix up in this extra embryonic mesoderm. You see this connecting stalk here? This connecting stalk is the extra embryonic mesoderm. Okay, germ cells migrate okay, to the connecting stalk or extra embryonic mesoderm, and through this extra embryonic mesoderm they go and lie in the wall of the yolk sac. So this is the amniotic cavity and this is the primitive yolk sac. Okay, primitive yolk sac. Okay, they go and lie in the through this, okay, they migrate via this pathway and come and lie in this dorsal wall of the yolk sac. So sometimes they believe that the germ cells are uh, going to come from the dorsal wall of the yolk sac. Okay, but anyway, through the dorsal wall of the yolk sac they are going to go into the intermediate mesoderm, which is nothing but it's just going to form the genitourinary system. So they will be going to the intermediate plate of mesoderm. But anyway, the germ cells, if there is epiblast, it is the epiblast. Okay, so primordial germ cell, you see, again the germ cell is derived from here, but here there is no option of epiblast. But if there is primitive ectoderm option, the primitive ectoderm is nothing but the epiblast. There is an option of primitive ectoderm, we will go for primitive ectoderm. But here it is just given as ectoderm, which will take us definitive ectoderm. So here we will go to the option of endoderm, because the germ cells migrate and come to lie in the dorsal wall of the yolk sac, which is nothing but the endoderm. Okay, so we'll take it as endoderm. Okay, cells will surround the oocyte in the Graafian follicle. Okay, you all know that it is cumulus oophoricus. Here we will see the diagrammatic thing. This is the structure of Graafian follicle, and here you can see the mature oocyte, okay, surrounded by cell, and this is cumulus oophoricus, and this is membrana granulosa. Okay, so in the primordial follicle you have the oocyte, okay, oocyte with a cell membrane surrounded by follicular cells which are flattened. Okay, if the follicular cells are flattened, it is a primordial follicle. And if the follicular cells are cuboidal, then it is the primary follicle, and that is the difference between primordial and primary follicle. What happens is the cuboidal cells later on proliferate and they deposit a material between the membrane of the oocyte and the cells. So this greenish thing is going to form the zona pellucida. So there is proliferation of this cuboidal cells, and later on cavities will be forming in the between the cells. Okay, later on they coalesce to form the Graafian follicle, which we saw before. Okay, so this is the entire Graafian follicle. This follicle has got ruptured, so releasing the ovum. Okay, here you have the new cytoplasm of the oocyte ovum, mature ovum. Here membrane of the ovum with the first polar body, okay, in the perivitelline space. In the first polar body is lying in the perivitelline space, that is the space between the vitelline membrane and zona pellucida, and you have these two layers of cumulus oophoricus. What happens to these two layers of cumulus oophoricus is this second layer, okay, disintegrates, and only this first layer, closer layer, remains to form the corona radiata. Okay, okay, this happens to the cumulus oophoricus. So the ovum is surrounded by cumulus oophoricus, or the mature oocyte in a Graafian follicle is surrounded by cumulus oophoricus. Fertilization is complete when first polar body is formed before ovulation, so that is wrong. Okay, the second polar body is formed. Yes, fertilization, after fertilization the second polar body is formed. Primary oocyte is formed, secondary oocyte is formed. Those are all wrong, as you already know. Okay, So this is the structure of the mature ovum. As I said, the second layer of cells in corona radiata has got disappeared, and only the first layer closer to the zona pellucida remains, and that forms corona radiata cell. Okay, so you have the vitelline membrane, perivitelline space, and the first polar body in the perivitelline space. Okay, nucleus you have, centrioles you have, and deutoplasm. One thing I have to tell you about deutoplasm: whenever you draw the structure of ovum, or whenever you see a ovum, the nucleus will be lying eccentrically. The nucleus will be lying eccentrically because of this deutoplasm. The deutoplasm is rich in lecithin. Okay, rich in lecithin. So it is very viscous that it pushes the nucleus to the periphery. So the nucleus will always be lying eccentrically in an ovum. So what happens is, now we have to talk about fertilization. So the sperm will be covered by the antigenic glycoprotein sheath. Okay, when it reaches the female genital tract, this antigenic glycoprotein sheath is removed, and that process is called capacitation, so that it will not be treated as a foreign body when it nears the ovum. Okay, so when the sperm is going to approach the ovum, it has to encounter these three barriers. First one are the cells of corona radiata. The second one is the zona pellucida, and the third one is the vitelline membrane. So when the sperm is approaching the corona radiata, what happens is the acrosome reaction is going to happen. Okay, you remember the acrosomal cap formed by the Golgi apparatus. So the acrosomal cap is going to release some enzymes like hyaluronidase. Okay, hyaluronidase enzyme, which helps in getting past the cells of corona radiata. Okay, so the next step is the head of the sperm should bind to the zona pellucida. The second encounter is the zona pellucida. Okay, so the head of the sperm should bind to zona pellucida. When coming to zona pellucida, it has number of receptors. Zona pellucida 1 receptor, zona pellucida 2, and zona pellucida 3. 3 receptor. But the key to enter the ovum is the zona pellucida 3 receptor. So the head of the sperm binds to the zona pellucida 3 protein. Okay, zona pellucida 3 protein, and then what happens is calcium influx. Okay, calcium influx happens because of this interaction. So there is release of acrosin enzymes. Okay, so there is dissolution of zona pellucida. Okay, so binding to the ZP3 receptor, there is release of acrosin enzymes. So there is dissolution of zona pellucida, and then it comes to the third encounter of vitelline membrane, where the membrane of the sperm comes in contact with the membrane of the ovum. When it comes in contact, there will be a sudden calcium influx, because of which sudden calcium influx. Okay, because of which there will be opening of the vitelline membrane, and there is entry of the male pronucleus inside the ovum. Okay, the rest of the sperm will be lying outside the ovum. Only the male pronucleus is allowed to get inside the ovum. Okay, so the fertilization has happened. See, the body and tail of the sperm is discarded. Okay, so this happens. So this interaction of the membrane of the sperm with the membrane of the ovum, the vitelline membrane of the ovum, results in calcium influx, because of which the gate is open, and which allows the male pronucleus to enter into the ovum. Okay, so this is what happens. See, there is hyaluronidase enzyme release. which helps in getting past the corona radiator, and acrosin release, which helps in getting past the zona pellucida, and the meeting of the membrane of the sperm with the membrane of the ovum, which results in calcium influx, which results in the entry of male pronucleus. So after the male pronucleus has entered, what happens is there will be aggregation of these cortical granules. Okay, aggregation of these cortical granules, okay, which has lysozyme like action and which will be destroying the key ZP3 receptor, so that it doesn't allow any more sperms to enter the ovum. Okay, that is, it is preventing polyspermy. Okay, so the aggregation after fertilization, the aggregation of the cortical granules is going to disintegrate the ZP3 receptor, which is the key to enter the ovum. Okay, so none of the other sperms can enter the ovum. Okay, so see, there will not be an actual fusion of male and female pronuclei. They come closer, and what happens is there is completion of the second meiotic division. So you have two polar bodies in the perivitelline space, and the cell becomes diploid. Okay, before the ovum was having 23 number of chromosomes, and now the cell becomes diploid, and the sex is also determined. And then immediately what happens is there is no one cell stage as such. It immediately undergoes cleavage to form the two cell stage. Okay, the two cell stage is formed, and there is release of the cortical granules, which dissolutes the ZP3 receptor, so it prevents polyspermy. These are the effects of fertilization. These are the 5 effects of fertilization. One is the completion of the second meiotic division. The second one is the diploid number of chromosomes is retained, and the determination of sex has happened, and cleavage has started, and there is dissolution of ZP3 receptor, so it prevents polyspermy. Okay, fertilization takes place after how much time of ovulation? Okay, the ovum sustains for 1 to 2 days only, so fertilization should happen within 1 to 2 days of ovulation. And the primary oocyte is formed after. Yes, still primary oocyte, only mitotic division was happening. Then the primary oocyte undergoes first meiotic division to form the secondary oocyte. So the primary oocyte is the result of meiotic division, which you can see in this picture also. Till primary oocyte is formed, only mitosis is happening. Okay. Then the correct statement about meiosis. Meiosis is needed to produce large number of exosperms. Large number or small number. For production of exosperms, meiosis is used. Okay, so it is right. Germ cells undergoes division to form. Okay, it undergoes division to form haploid cell. So this is wrong. Occurs in germ cells, which results in, yes, of course, it occurs in germ cells. One spermatocyte produces 4 sperms. Okay, and one oocyte produces 1 O. Yes. Okay, so this statement is wrong. Somatic cells does not divide by meiosis because number of chromosomes. Yes, meiosis is reduction division, and to be specific, meiosis 1 is a reduction division, and somatic cells does not undergo. So the correct statement is the first and the third one. Okay, sperm remains fertile for how many? Sperm remains fertile. Now the sperm remains for how many hours? Now it is 72 hours. But sperm remains fertile for how many hours? Now it is only about 24 to 48 hours. Okay, because they have specifically asked about fertility. Okay, it is 24 to 48 hours. Average reproductive lifespan of ovum, you all already know, it is 12 to 24 hours. Okay. And after how many hours of LS search? Okay, to be more specific, LS search happens 34 to 36 hours prior to ovulation. Now the option close to it is 24 to 36 hours. Okay, so trophoblast divides into cyto and syncyto. Okay, so this you have to know. Okay, these events happen in the second week of development. So this trophoblast division into cyto and syncytio trophoblast happens in the second week. Okay, second week அப்படின்னு பார்த்தோன்னா these are the two options. But it happens early in the second week, so it is 8 to 12 days. Okay, so seeing about second week, what happens is this embryo has come inside the uterine cavity and it has got implanted by the end of first week. Okay, it has just got implanted. The implantation is not yet complete, but it has just come into the uterine cavity and it has just embedded in the endometrium. Okay, so in the stage what happens is the cells of the embryo organize themselves into an inner cell mass and an outer cell mass. They organize themselves into inner cell mass and outer cell mass. The inner cell mass is called as the embryoblast and the outer cell mass is called as the trophoblast. And later what happens is the trophoblasts themselves differentiate into this well-defined cells, well-defined cytotrophoblast and the syncytium called syncytiotrophoblast. Okay, and then the inner cell mass later on forms the bilaminar germ disc, that is epiblast and hypoblast. Because of this epiblast and hypoblast, you have two cavities, amniotic cavity and the primitive yolk sac. Okay, here you have the amniotic cavity and here you have the primitive yolk sac, and there is deposition of extra embryonic mesoderm. Okay, you remember the connecting stop thing. So this is the extra embryonic mesoderm between the trophoblast and the embryoblast. Okay, so this is the extra embryonic mesoderm, and what happens is layers develop within the extra embryonic mesoderm. So that which is closer to the trophoblast is somatopleuric mesoderm, and that which is closer to the embryo is splanchnopluric mesoderm. So what I am coming to say is second week is a week of 2. Okay, so the first the cells are getting organized in the first point is inner cell mass and outer cell mass. Later on the outer cell mass cytotrophoblast, syncytiotrophoblast. Then the inner cell mass epiblast, hypoblast. And you have two cavities, amniotic cavity and the primitive yolk sac. And then you have the extra embryonic mesoderm dividing itself because of the cavity in between. You have this grayish thing closer to the trophoblast as somatopleuric mesoderm because it is going to contribute to the body wall, and that which is closer to the embryo is splanchnopluric mesoderm. So you see it is a week of 2. Okay, so fertilized ovum reaches the uterus. Okay, it reaches the uterus in 3 to 4 days. You have to have a pictorial memory for this. See, in 72 hours, okay, the morula reaches the uterine cavity. Okay, morula is usually said as 16 cell stage. Okay, so here is a 16 cell stage of morula. So the advanced morula stage, conceptus enters uterine cavity at which cell stage? Okay, it is the advanced morula stage. Okay, the morula is 16 cell stage, but by the time it reaches the uterine cavity, it would have become a 32 cell stage. Okay, so implantation occurs at, see, the fertilization to implantation, that is for the first week. So 5 to 7 days implantation would have happened. Okay, so see, the implantation of the blastocyst happens in the 6th or 7th day after fertilization. Have this pictorial memory in mind. Okay, the extra embryonic mesoderm. See, the extra embryonic mesoderm. Now, this extra embryonic mesoderm is a primitive mesoderm. Okay, the epiblast is a primitive ectoderm. The hypoblast is a primitive endoderm. This extra embryonic mesoderm is a primitive mesoderm. So, you cannot say epiblast or hypoblast. Okay. It is not the secondary yolk sac because it is a definitive yolk sac. So, the answer is primary yolk sac. But it is not clear. So that is all for today, guys. So we'll see the rest of the embryology in the next class. You can see this video whenever you are relaxing or you want to relax. Okay, see this video in a relaxed way. Don't try to memorize things. Don't struggle yourself. Okay, when you are relaxed, the things will easily go in. Okay, we'll see. Thank you.